The Air Force Falcons lose everybody from last season. Literally everybody. Okay, that might be a little bit of an exaggeration, but 17 starters from last year are gone, which means only 5 return to this team. Only 2 offensively. The entire offensive line is gone, and Air Force is just going to have to retool and reload. But they have one of the better head coaches in Troy Calhoun. So can Troy Calhoun lead this Air Force team to reclaim the Commander-in-Chief's trophy in 2024? You're about to find out what I think here in this video. What's up, Tailgaters? You're in the booth with Tailgate Nate today. I want to welcome you to my channel and welcome you back to prediction season. It's where I predict all 134 FBS level college football teams. That means I'm doing your favorite team. So hit the subscribe button and ring the bell, whether I have or haven't, because honestly, you just want to hear my thoughts on every team in the country. I know you do. Thank you so much for watching this video, and a happy 4th of July to all of my fellow Americans out there. We have done all the armed forces, or I should say haven't done. We are doing all the armed forces teams today in celebration of 4th of July, and thank you for taking time out of your festivities to talk some college football with me. Guys, you can support the channel in any way you want. Watching the video, again, is a huge one, and it means a lot to me. Subscribing, ringing the bell is another big one, but anything else you do to interact with the channel helps us support it, whether that's liking, commenting, sharing. I just really appreciate all the support that I can get and all the support that you guys have been giving me over prediction season so far. But now we're moving on to talk about the Air Force Falcons. How do we do it this year? Well, we'll talk about the team's offense, talk about the team's defense, and at the end of the video, we will go through the Air Force football schedule, and we'll give it a game-by-game preview and prediction. I do have a couple more things before we do start, because right over here are the team's stats. They put up either offensively or defensively last season, and of course, for your viewing pleasure, right below the team's logo, I have put the team's coaching staff. Before we dive on into talking about Air Force, I will be flat out honest. It was really, really hard for me to find a lot of information about who's leaving the roster, who's coming back on the roster, and there's not a whole lot of depth that I will be talking about in this video. So anyone that is close to the Air Force Falcons, please leave some more pieces that will be on this team that you think can make a huge impact in the comment section below. I will be very, very intrigued to hear what you guys have to say, because I want to know more about this Air Force team. All I know is that they lose a ton of talent from last season, and that starts with the quarterback room. They are losing Zach Larrier from a season ago. Now, he went down with injury later in the year, but still was the primary quarterback for this team. 789 yards, 7 touchdowns to 2 interceptions on almost 60% completion percentage for Air Force last season against a team that only threw 105 passes. Jensen Jones, Ben Britton are also gone, while Jacob Kilzer has entered the transfer portal. So it's going to be a completely overhauled quarterback room for this team. But John Boucher, yes, I do believe, to my knowledge, that is how you pronounce that last name, much like Bobby Boucher, of course, from the hit movie. But John Boucher is coming into the system, and he is set to take over for the Air Force Falcons. 152 yards, no touchdowns, 1 interception on 47% completion percentage last year, but he is more of a passing quarterback than what Air Force has had in the past. So that 85 passing yards per game number definitely should take a step up here in 2024, especially since they do have some pretty solid wide receiver pieces coming back. But again, the focus of this team, as much as it was last year, is this team's rush game. They averaged over 250 rushing yards per game. In fact, over 275 rushing yards per game. You see the number right over there. They were one of the best rushing offenses in the country, and that is by design with Troy Calhoun's team. But they lose a ton of talent in this running back room. And again, I know they're not all running backs. You have your wing backs, your slot backs, your half backs, your fullbacks, again, whatever you want to call them. They lose a lot of talent in this rushing room. Emmanuel Michel is going to be gone, who was the leading rusher out of the fullback position for this team last year. 950 yards on 11, or I should say 950 yards and 11 touchdowns on 204 carries. Zach Larrier, again, pretty big part to this run game. He was second on the team in rushing. John Lee Eldridge is off through the transfer portal, 599 yards and 6 touchdowns. Last season as well. You also do lose Owen Burke, Jalen Johnson, Jet Harris, and a ton of other guys that had pretty big impacts to this rushing room a season ago. But you do still get some very nice pieces back. Dylan Carson is coming back. He had 493 yards and 2 touchdowns last season. And then a bunch of guys that didn't see much playing time last year, albeit Aiden Calvert had over 170 yards last year. But Terrence Gist, Darius Stone, Cade Frew, and lots of others will be some big pieces to this rushing room for the Air Force Falcons. Wide receiver room, again, with John Boucher being more of a passing quarterback than Air Force has seen, the wide receiver room becomes as important as it has been in many, many years for Troy Calhoun's program. You do lose a couple guys out of this pass catching room, though, as Dane Kinnaman and Wyatt Wilson are both gone, while Caleb Rios has graduated from the Air Force Academy but is off to play for the Florida Gators, and James Bryant is gone due to graduation there as well. Nonetheless, you do get arguably your most talented wide receiver back in Jared Rosnos. He had 374 yards on 12 catches, had 3 touchdowns last year. And Air Force, by the way, even for a team that doesn't throw the ball that often, again, only 105 passes thrown last year. Only 55 of them were complete. They threw for over 1,100 yards last season. They led the team in yards they led the nation in yards per reception with 20.1. Jared Rosnos was a big part of that. You do get Cade Harris back, who can be utilized as both a wide receiver and a back out of the backfield as well. But Cade Harris, a very talented player, so you have a great 1-2 punch in the wide receiver room. Brandon Engel and Cameron Breyer will provide some depth to that wide receiver room, and then the tight end room. It's going to be a pretty different tight end room for this team here in 2024. So Bruin Fleischman is coming in to be that main tight end, while Parker Menifee will surely be his backup. You lose your entire starting offensive line from last year: Wesley Ndongo, Thor Paglialong, what a first name that is, and Thor, Ethan Jackman, Adam Karras, and Caleb Holcomb are all gone. So your projected starting 5, again, not much depth here because, again, it was hard to find information as far as who is and who isn't on the depth chart for the Air Force Falcons. But your projected starting offensive line looks like this: Luke Vondenhaar, Michael Mechanic, Corsten Cooley, Jackson Kohal, and Alex Moore are, again, your projected starting 5 on the offensive line. I'd love to know more depth in the comment section down below. But overall for this offense, look, I have a lot of faith in Troy Calhoun. I think this rushing attack will be fine. I mean, after Brad Roberts was gone, there were some people out there that were like, oh, what are they going to do in this running back room? Emmanuel Michel, John Lee Eldridge were some phenomenal pieces last year, and now a lot of people were like, oh, Emmanuel Michel, John Lee Eldridge are gone. What are we going to do? Dylan Carson is there. Aiden Calvert will there. I think those guys are going to shine. I think Rosnos and Harris are going to shine. I think John Boucher is a really solid quarterback that, look, he's more of a passing quarterback, and we know what happened, or I should say we can only theorize what will happen when Troy Calhoun is really able to do everything that he wants with him. I think it's going to lead to some really good things, but how does the offensive line transition in, right? Especially with these Armed Forces teams, you just get a ton of guys that have been sitting in this program forever, waiting to play. We'll see how the offensive line transitions to an entire new starting 5 here in 2024. Only gave up 11 sacks last year on the rare occasions their quarterbacks did drop back to pass. When you go ahead and take a look at this defense, again, does lose some solid talent, but this was one of the better defenses in the country in 2024 or in 2023. It should be again in 2024, even though a lot of this talent does leave. On the defensive line, no name is more notable leaving this team, at least, than P.J. Ramsey. P.J. Ramsey, very good player for this team, 35 tackles, 7.5 sacks last season. That was second on the team last year, behind a guy we'll talk about here in just a little bit, Jaden Theyergood and Kupano Blake also leave this defensive line room. So when you talk about the defensive line room, well, it is going to be led by Peyton Droik, and I don't believe I'm saying that last name right, but if I am, let me know, and let me know how to say it correctly. But he's going to be leading the charge on the defensive line. Jack Curtis, a lot of people in this program are talking about he's an absolute stud. He'll get some big playing time. Daniel Grabi, James Tomasi, Caleb Tompkins, and Aiden Schwartz are all back to this room as well. Again, Peyton, Jack, and James, who's a great veteran coming back, should be leading this defensive line that, again, even though with P.J. Ramsey, Jaden Theyergood, and some other pieces gone, it'll be one of the better rushing defensive lines. It'll be one of the better rushing defensive units here in 2024. And again, you can even say that even with the amount of talent they lose in their linebacker room, because Bo Richter kind of utilized as that edge rusher, more of a true linebacker here with this program, was your most talented defensive player from last season, and he is gone for good reason. He was really, really good. 45 tackles, led the team with 10 sacks, 1 pass defended. He did force 3 fumbles, recovered 2 of them last season. Exceptionally good player. You'll see him playing on Sundays, as well as the leading tackler for Air Force last year. I should say he had 93 tackles, 2 sacks. That was Alec Mock. Jonathan Youngblood also does leave due to graduation, but you do get a lot of guys coming back to this linebacker room. Osara Ayahi, and I definitely butchered that last name as well. Aihi, however you pronounce that last name again, I apologize sincerely. Zach Juckle will be back, as well as Jackson Adams. Again, couldn't find a lot of depth on this linebacker position, so let me know more names in the comment section below. But those three guys will get the most playing time in the linebacker room, at least to my knowledge, here in 2024. Defensive back room doesn't lose a whole ton of corners. Only Corey Collins, to my knowledge, seems to have graduated from that cornerback position. He has graduated from the academy. But in your safety room, you do lose a lot of talent. Trey Taylor's a very solid piece, 74 tackles, a half a sack, 4 pass defended, and tied for the team lead with 3 interceptions. He's tied for the team lead, by the way, with Jonathan Youngblood, who, again, is gone due to graduation. But you'll see Trey Taylor play on Sundays. He's a very, very talented player. I believe drafted in the 6th or 7th round by the Raiders. Very good player that you will definitely see playing in the NFL. He should get some solid playing time. He's a very talented player. Jaden Goodwin, CJ Boyd, Jake Smith, and Jalen Murgerson are all gone due to graduation. They are out of the academy. So your defensive back room looks like this. Jerome Gaylord and Jamari Bellamy were two of the better corners on this team last season, so you will get both of them returning here to this team. Ty Collins is the guy that's going to get some good playing time, and Trey Williams back to this team as well. And then your safety room, again, couldn't find a lot of depth, but you do get Levi Brown and Jake Martin back, as well as Camby Goff. Now, he might, to some of you out there, might be a little bit of a forgotten piece. I know he's not forgotten to my Air Force fans. He was out all of last season due to an injury, but he's one of the better, if not the best defensive back that you'll see on this Air Force team in 2024. He'll have a huge impact to this team this upcoming season. And kickers are people too, and you return everyone from last year. Carson Bay and Luke Freer, they're waiting for one of those guys to kind of pull away to get primary punting duties, but as of right now, both of them do come back, while Matthew DePore comes back to do the kicking duties for the Air Force Falcons. Again, please let me know more depth in the comment section down below. I will just be very blunt. It was very hard to find information on this Air Force team's roster as far as who was on it, who left, who was coming back, things like that. But overall, I mean, we know what this Troy Calhoun defense is going to be, right? It's going to be one of the better defensive units in the country. And even though it loses a ton of talent, especially with these armed forces academy teams, it's really, really difficult to kind of pinpoint how much of an impact that's going to have because, again, Air Force has lost a lot of talented defensive pieces in years prior. People have gone, oh, well, they're not going to be able to fill his shoes, and then someone comes through that looks even better. So maybe one of these guys on the right-hand side there of that list is going to explode, be some really good players. Jack Curtis could definitely do it. We'll see how Camby Goff looks coming back from injury. There are a lot of really good pieces here, and Air Force, probably the Armed Forces team I like the best in 2024 overall. You take a look at their schedule now. Mountain West teams are only playing 7 conference games this year, and they're going to play at least one of either Oregon State or Washington State. They get the Oregon State Beavers, but we'll talk about that game when we get there. Any game at home will be underlined, while any game on the road is in italics, guys. That's that slanted text. Any game in green is going to be a nice, comfortable win for Air Force, like their win against Merrimack should be to open up the season. Any game in yellow will be a close, competitive game, but I still think the Falcons are able to win, and red is a loss. We'll dive right on into week 2 as there's no much more need to discuss that Merrimack game, but San Jose State is up next. So they get a Mountain West game pretty early in the schedule, and this is a very interesting one here because it's kind of a mystery on what San Jose State is going to look like here in 2024. Brent Brennan is gone, and he took a ton of talent with him to the Arizona Wildcats, where he is coaching now, as well as there are a lot of other pieces leaving that team that didn't follow Brent Brennan over to Arizona, but left to go to some other programs and are going to be really talented pieces wherever they wound up. San Jose State got decimated from seasons prior, and I think while they could have moments where they're going to be a competitive team, I think Air Force is just better, especially with the physicality, and I'm really, really excited to see what kind of maybe even a new look Air Force offense is going to look like with as much of a passing quarterback as John Boucher can be. They're going to want to utilize him in every way possible, whether that's running the football or being able to hit some passes too. I'm really excited to see what that looks like. I think Air Force is going to be able to beat San Jose State. However, I do think you start out 2-0, I think you'll lose your next 2 games. While Air Force definitely can compete with Baylor, and I see this as a as a game where Air Force can win. Dave Aranda is going to be coaching for his life this year, and Baylor got a quarterback in there that I really, really like. A former Toledo Rocket, a dual threat quarterback by the name of Daquan Finn. He's a very, very talented player. I've seen him play. He is an exceptional talent. Baylor's got some other really, really good pieces there, as well as Air Force has to go on the road to play this Baylor team. I think Baylor's going to be able to pick up some wins this season. Again, Dave Aranda going to be looking to, in a lot of people's opinion, try to save his job. This is the game that he's probably going to need to win in order to do so. While it's a game Air Force is going to compete in and keep close, I think Daquan Finn and the Bears pull out that win. And even though Craig Bull is gone from Wyoming, there is a lot of solid talent there and a lot of returning pieces from last season. Jay Sawvell is coming in to coach that team, and I think he's going to see some really good success. Wyoming has always known to have been feisty and competitive, and they pull out some wins that not a lot of people expect them to do, especially if this is an Air Force team that's going to continue to be super physical defensively, and if this offense can continue to run the football as effectively as they have, as well as now having a bigger threat throwing the football. Air Force is going to be scary this year, but on the road against Wyoming, a lot of good pieces there, and that home field environment in Laramie is unlike any other. I think that is a win for the Wyoming Cowboys. But then I got Wyoming on the brain, I guess. Air Force has got to play the Navy midshipmen. So the road to try to win the Commander-in-Chief's trophy starts here, and I think it starts out well. Navy's going to look to a new system here. I think they're going to be utilizing more of the wing-bone look, and that new offensive system, I think it's going to take some time to settle in. Well, I like Brian Newberry, and I like a lot of the pieces that Navy has. Ty Lavatai is gone. You got some really good defensive players leaving that team, and Navy, I think is going to have their struggles because they have a very tough schedule for their standards. So I think that's going to be a win, as well as this game is in Colorado at home for the Air Force Falcons. They got to go on the road to play the New Mexico Lobos. And even though this is the game you can't sleep on, I do see Air Force pulling out that win. Well, I guess it's I think too, because that's what a prediction is. Whatever. I think they're going to go on the road and beat the New Mexico Lobos. Some really solid pieces there that are on that team. And New Mexico's a program trending in the right direction, but I think Air Force is overall just going to be better in 2024. That road environment will be tough for them, but they'll walk out of New Mexico with a win, and they'll get to come back home, play an in-state team in the Colorado State Rams. And even though I really do like that squad, Jay Norvell, I think, has some very nice things going at Colorado State. They're going to be a very competitive team in the Mountain West Conference this season. I do have them winning that game there. And if you watched my Army video earlier, you'll know that I have Air Force beating the Army Black Knights after their second and final bye week of the 2024 season, as well as having an extra week to prepare for the Army Black Knights. Again, I think Air Force's physicality on defense is going to prove superior, especially when these two styles have collided. Yes, Army was able to beat Navy Army beat Navy last year, but Army was able to beat Air Force on the road this past season. I think Air Force is going to do the same thing that Army did last year. I think Air Force's physicality on defense is just going to be superior. I think it's going to be better, and I think Army trying to break in some new defensive pieces, especially in that defensive front, where they're going to look to try to get better. I don't think they're going to be able to slow down Air Force enough, and the Falcons win on the road. But then you got some very tough games coming up here. I think you lose to Fresno State, and even though you have that game at home, even though it is a winnable game for this program, I really like Fresno State in 2024. Mikey Keene is coming back to play quarterback. You have some really solid pieces offensively and defensively, or I should say you have some really solid pieces offensively that come back to surround Mikey Keene with some really, really good talent. Defensively, Fresno State is going to be one of the better units in the Mountain West Conference. They're going to be one of the better teams in the Mountain West Conference overall. I love Jeff Tedford as a head coach. He continues to do excellent things with this program, and he'll do so again in 2024. I see that being a win for the Fresno State Bulldogs and thusly a loss for the Air Force Falcons, which means it's their third loss on the season, and then you get to play the Oregon State Beavers. Now, the Beavers still have some pretty solid talent, including quarterback Ben Gulbranson, who does return for what feels like the ntth year with this Oregon State team. But DJU gone through the portal. Damian Martinez gone through the portal. Jack Velling, starting tight end, gone through the portal. Silas Bolden gone through the portal. defensive pieces like Easton Mascarenas-Arnold gone through the portal. And even more names that I didn't mention there. This team got decimated, and not to mention their head coach Jonathan Smith is now in East Lansing. This game is at home for Air Force. I think the physicality on defense is too much, and it's an offense that's going to be tough to plan for this Oregon State team. That's a win for the Air Force Falcons. Got to go on the road and play Nevada, but that's a team that's still trying to rebuild, retool, reload, and get things figured out with that program. I have that being a fairly easy win for the Air Force Falcons. But then on the road against San Diego State, I think there are a lot of people sleeping on the Aztecs this year. Sean Lewis is coming in, and look, a lot of those defensive philosophies that Brady Hoke instilled are going to remain there. Sean Lewis coming in, you trade a defensive mind for an offensive mind. You got a ton of talented transfers entering that program, and I think San Diego State is going to be a little bit of surprise to a lot of people in the Mountain West ranks. I got the Aztecs winning that game against Air Force to send the Falcons home with 8-4, which again, pretty typical for Troy Calhoun's group. This is a very manageable schedule. They definitely can get 10 wins here, but most important thing for the Air Force Falcons fans, I have you winning the Commander-in-Chief Trophy in 2024. Let me know what you think about the Falcons in the comment section down below. As always, remember to play hard but tailgate harder, and we'll do the final Armed Forces team coming up next, which will be Navy. Happy 4th of July. See you in the next one. Goodbye.